Um, Hey there. This is more about a personal thing, but I also notice it kind of influences like the movies and the way I write, because what I write in my movies come out of my psychology and what I think is important. Like most movies, though, a lot of stories are basically just following the three-part story design and arc, and basically doing what's always been done in all the other stories. But mine are a little bit more personal shares. Maybe that's why they don't end up in big movie theaters. Yeah, who knows? Um, be nice to like get a production company and everything. But anyway, so I've mentioned this before. I grew up feeling unloved, feeling unwanted, feeling like I don't matter. It's futile to try, and it's showing up. I'm journaling in this whole thing about losing weight, and it's like, wow, that just keeps repeating over and over and over throughout my life, which I'm glad I don't do that anymore. But I have noticed that it does impact the way I write stories. In particular, I've there was like a feeling of worthlessness and unworthiness around women. Looking back, I'm not entirely sure why, but I just had this belief that I was unworthy and women didn't like me, and if I got their approval and love, that would prove I didn't suck, which is, in the end, me judging myself. But there was I used to have this friend. She was younger than me, probably like 18 years separate. She always liked to point out that if I ever acted the slightest bit interested in her, she would say, "Remember when you were 18, I was 1 week old," and then I'd feel like a pervert. Um, which you know, she was in her mid 20s and I was up in my 40s. I don't know. Maybe I still was a pervert. I don't know. But I did want to hang out with her because she was my only. I held her as my only friend, and if she left, I'd be devastated. Looking back at it, I had lots of friends. I had lots of people who loved me and hung out with me, but in my mind, she was the representative of I suck, and if this person sticks with me, I don't suck, so I'm okay. Um, she also had some stuff going on. It was it's hard to describe because I was on the outside watching it and listening to her. She had this tendency to like get involved with guys who'd then have sex with her, and then she'd make them wrong and vilify them. And according to her, her issues were she got molested by an uncle way back when she was like 3 or 4. And I, felt great compassion for her and wanted her to be able to get over this. And, I knew from my pain it was hard. But at the same time, I kind of wondered because I don't mean to be too graphic here, but a full grown man trying to put his penis in a 3-year-old girl sounds like it would have been pretty painfully and bloodily disastrous. But I didn't want to doubt her, so I just believed her. But I was kind of like, yeah, okay. Um, Never really sure what was going on her end. She'd do things like ask me if I wanted to cuddle in bed, and then I'd cuddle up with her, and she'd spend like 2 hours telling me to not, don't think of anything sexual, and don't you dare touch me, and I was like, okay, I don't know what to do here. You know, I wanted to be close, but it seemed like in order to be close, I had to get emotionally shredded and everything. And what else? You know, and I was attracted to her sexually at the time, but I wanted to be, guy you can trust. So I also had it in my mind that if I was guy you could trust and didn't try to like have sex with women, then they would love me. I'm not sure how squirrely that is, but my whole life experience has been women don't really generally want to. I had two girlfriends in college. One of them was really into it, and the other one, I think it was just her, she was as needy as I was. You know, her dad had committed suicide, like my mom had committed suicide. And she felt she was supposed to. It was also kind of, she wanted me to slap her during sex, and I was like, well, I'm not going to hit you. And then she got frustrated with me and would chew me out. And I'm like, well, gee, I'm trying to be the nice guy here. So, you know, I've had some confusion about women, shall we say. But anyway, you know, this friend of mine, um, like, you know, one time I'm just standing there talking to her, visiting her. She's like house setting someone's house, and I'm visiting her. And all of a sudden, she just pulls her pants down and rips her clothes off and is standing naked in front of me. And I'm like, you know, not entirely sure what's going on or what I should do because, you know, she's told me how much she hates the way men sexually mistreat her. And yet, here's, you know, she's quite lovely and voluptuous and beautiful. And of course, I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty hot. But I better not do anything because, you know, I want to be a guy you can trust. And then she paraded around in front of me for about a minute and a half, and then she went and got in the shower. And I kind of followed and looked at her through the shower door for a few minutes, and then I said, well, yeah, this is nothing but torturous. So I, you know, went out to another room. Never really talked about it. But you know, she always did sort of have this feeling of a little girl who wanted to have somebody do stuff to her, but said she didn't. It's the only way I can describe it. And you know, she would cry to me about constantly these guys would get together with her and they'd have sex with her, and she didn't want to have sex. Except then she also liked getting together with two guys one time. That was fun, and she'd tell me about what she was doing to her boyfriends, and I guess I was supposed to be her girlfriend and go, oh, that's really nice. You know, I'm sitting over being this male with this beautiful woman telling me about all of her sexual exploits, and I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I'll be your friend here. But she would just do stuff like that. She had she had one boyfriend. This was later on in the relationship. This kind of went on for like 12, 15 years. And she kept telling me that he had diabetes, and you know, his fingers and toes were rotting, and toes had to be cut off, and then a finger had to be cut off, and he wouldn't take care of himself, and he was irresponsible, and she was having to care for him. And you know, three toes were taken off one of his feet, and he could barely walk, and he was dying, and he wouldn't take care of him, and she didn't know what to do. And then, you know, she stopped talking to me, and I never really heard the end of the story, but it kind of sounded like he was dying or he died. My impression was he died. And, you know, I was sitting there listening to it, and she was also telling me apparently she worked for Tony Robbins, the Mr. Power guy, seminar guy. And she talked about how he'd come home and having done these big workshops about personal empowerment and blah, blah, blah. And he'd come home and blow his nose in his shirt and throw it at her. And he apparently had a couple of children outside of wedlock. And basically, he was just this real jerk of a guy. And I was like, well, okay, you know, that could be, I don't know. I don't know Tony Robbins. And then one day she invited me to dinner. And it was really interesting because, you know, I kind of developed the attitude I really couldn't trust my instincts or my feelings because My feelings were with her and all women is, God, I want to get into a relationship with you. Why won't you let me? How do I get there? Oh, I'm probably wrong about what I think's going on. So, I didn't really trust my instincts. But she invites me to this dinner, and the first thing I thought was, I'm about to get kicked out of her life. And then we go to dinner, and goes on for about an hour and a half, and then she hands me this. I had loaned her a bunch of money, and she hands me this envelope with the exact amount of money that she owed me. I hadn't talked to her in several months until this point, so she'd apparently been saving this money up and getting all ready for this. Hands me this envelope and tells me I'm one of her abusers and I am never to talk to her again. And all I could think in my head at the time was, I'm your abuser? What the hell have you been doing to me? But then the next thing I thought was, well, if she thinks I'm her abuser and I think she's abusive, she's probably pretty smart and we should stop seeing each other. And it was actually pretty painful, again, because, she was my, this gives you an idea how messed up I was. She was my only friend. She was the only woman who proved I didn't suck. This woman who's doing all this stuff and kind of just bringing in all sorts of odd insanity. So, suddenly I was out of her life, and, the years go by. I get used to not needing women. I became more whole and strong inside and being well defined by me, I no longer felt need for external validation, didn't feel like there was anything wrong with me. And one day I'm at a coffee house, and her boyfriend with the diabetes, with all the toes missing and fingers missing, who died, comes walking in the coffee house with all of his fingers, and he's got sandals on, he's got all of his toes, and he walks up and says, hi, and I'm just staring at him. It took me about a minute to say hi back, because guy's supposed to be dead. But also, well, gee, that seems like a lie that she told me. And what about that stuff about Tony Robbins? Was any of that real? What about that stuff about her uncle when she was 3? Was any of that real? Was anything in it real? I was lost in my whole drama about I don't suck, so I don't know that I was actually there present. I was in my drama. And I guess she was in hers. But it's really unnerving to discover that everything you believed and you thought wasn't. So I mentioned this to him, and he thought, oh, that's pretty funny. Ha ha ha. And then, we drank tea together, and I just sort of stared, because it's like almost everything she said just kind of came flooding back. And I just didn't know what to make of it. Except I was glad I didn't know her anymore. Not really sure why I'm telling you this, but, a lot of my stories have to do with the struggles between men and women. Maybe all of my stories are reflections of my internal struggles. Anyway, not sure what the point of this is, but sure was an interesting ride. Not really sure what people are doing to each other. I guess couples do this, and men and women do this to each other a lot out of their internal stories and struggles, but it's really nice to be here and present and calm and not awash in all that drama. Okay, thank you. Till next time.